I've known Bert for 45 years. I met him for the first time in 1967 when I was a graduate student, and I am Bert's first graduate student, and I'm 73 years old, so go figure. And so over a space of a very long time, I've been able to think about Bert a lot, see Bert a lot, read a lot of Bert stuff, come very close to his family, not only to Anne, but also to his daughter, his grandchildren. And I think that the most important thing that I can bring to all that experience is to talk about two things that seem to be in conflict with each other that aren't. First of these two items is the fact that everybody understands that Bert's research is deeply, deeply involved with the dark side of human nature. Bert's research is involved with depression, with lynching, with flogging, with degradation, with dishonor. And his sense of what human beings are capable of is probably most forcefully and dramatically exemplified in the book Explaining How the University Review the Press, which is really all about how the concept of honor is tied into modern problems of warfare, counterinsurgency, terrorism, the unintended consequences of elective warfare against Middle Eastern nations. Bert dealt with things that were very, very hard for people to understand. He wrote an entire book about depression and what it did to a family. And I think the courage to be able to dig in many deep interdisciplinary ways, he's a storyteller, social psychologist, anthropologist, fierce archival researcher, but the storytelling is the most important part. That's where Bert made the tragedy and also people's transcendent ability to be able to work against tragedy, to really come deeply, strongly into his work. But this was a dealer in mayhem and in bad things. And what's so wonderful about that is what we've known him best for besides his scholarship. A person with tremendous generosity, and a person who lived through the people that he served. There's no greater mentor of younger people that's been in this profession for the past century than Bert Wyatt. Thinking about all of this, I went back to my own graduate school days, all tied up in racial conflict and strife in the mid-1960s, including Ohio. Absolutely lost as a graduate student. Bert came into town in his Volkswagen van, fleeing Colorado, University of Colorado, where I think he'd been terminated. And he elected to leave. Okay. Anyway, he left under dubious circumstances. Untenured at Case Western Reserve University, I was the first graduate student he'd ever seen. He was revising his dissertation to make it into a book, because it was a long ways from that. And because that's what he was doing, he taught me how to write a book rather than do a dissertation. And my dissertation was published as a book the year after his finally was. I was on the phone with Dan Kilbride, who's 30 years younger than me. Another Bert student. Teaches at John Carroll University. And together with Lisa Frank, I'm going to be talking about a little bit in a minute, one of the people who put together the wonderful festschrift that was done for Bert as a consequence of a 2-day celebration that happened on his behalf, celebrating his role as a mentor. Big book of essays on Southern character. But I'm talking to Dan. I said, how was it for you when you first started graduate school? He said, oh God, I was just lost. I had no idea why I was at the University of Florida. I couldn't get into any of my classes. I didn't know what history I wanted to study. The only course I knew that I wanted to take was Bert Wyatt Brown Southern History class. And it was closed. And I happened to run into him in the hall. He was just come back from getting exercise. He was playing tennis and dripping in sweat. And I said, Dr. Wyatt Brown, can I please get into your class? And he said, why not? What interests you? Bert was always out front wanting to find out where the point of nexus, the point of connection was. So the man who studies dark things illuminates other people. The final story that I want to tell really gets to where I think it all comes together. There are many Berts. And they're not separate Berts. They're not alienated Bert 1 from Bert 2 or anything else like that. They all come together. And this was an event that happened in Anne's living room. Started there, ended up down in the dining room of the retirement home that Bert and Andrew lived in Baltimore. I was there in 2011 for a shear conference. Who shows up there but Andrew and Lisa Frank, who are also students of Bert. They teach at, where? FSU, right? Right. They're there with their entire family. They have 3 little kids. One's named Daniel, one's named Noah, and one's named Shayna. Donna and Noah and Shayna are a huge handful. You know, they're kids, they're squirmy, they have very different interests. Meantime, while they're squirming, Bert is engaging everybody in a big dialogue having to do with Andrew's interests in maroon communities. So we're having a discussion about maroon communities, while at the same time, in another aspect of Bert, he's somehow able to talk to and entertain these kids, while at the same time talking himself about his own work and the book that he's doing. This is not a person quarreling with himself. This is a person creating something that's much bigger than an intellectual community. It's much more like family. Bert was a magic man. He deserves to be remembered that way. His influence on scholarship shatters through this program. I went through the program for this conference and found 4 different sessions that mentioned on it.